Formula One leaves Europe and heads back to North America this weekend for the Canadian Grand Prix as Red Bull get ready to celebrate 100 wins as the Red Bull team. It could happen this weekend, and let's face it, it's likely to happen, the form they've been on. But what about the chasing pack? We will talk about this weekend's race with two of our experts, Jonathan Noble and Jake Boxall-Legge. And my name is Martyn Lee from the Autosport podcast. John, I want to get straight into the form from Barcelona and Spain, and we saw a double Mercedes podium last time out. How much of those upgrades, which we saw first introduced at Monaco, do you think were track specific, or how much do you think Mercedes have added to take the fight to Red Bull this weekend?
I think it's hard to separate the two, but I think they both worked in conjunction with each other to help the team move forward. I think Barcelona itself anyway would have suited that car. High downforce, not massively aero efficient, and Barcelona's not a track where you need that huge straight line speed potential, high speed corners. So all the elements that suited the Mercedes anyway were there, but I think the upgrades have helped. They've delivered not only a step forward in performance downforce, but I think a better handling car as well. I mean, I think it's taken them a bit of time to get there. We heard Lewis and George Russell talk about that crucial simulator session that Mick Schumacher did on the Friday night at Barcelona when they were in worlds of trouble on Friday, clicked, got it sorted for Saturday. So I think they've moved forwards. I think there's still a gap, but I don't think things may be as close this weekend as they were in Spain.
And JBL, Red Bull clearly the favourites going into this weekend, as I mentioned at the start, heading towards Red Bull 100. They've had some fantastic wins over the years, periods of dominance, periods of having to see Mercedes take all the wins, and they came back. They did it. The Adrian Newey design of that car last year, this year, shows that, well, you're never down and out if you got the right people. Clearly favourites going into this weekend. Any thoughts from you on the Red Bull package and one of my favourite tracks of the year heading back to Canada?
Well, it should be another very, very strong circuit for it. As we know, Montreal's got these very, very long straights where the Red Bull should excel, particularly with DRS and particularly with, it's quite a low drag package. So it should do the job. But behind that, it kind of depends on who we're going to see, because there are zones of each of the circuit that could suit each, best of the rest car, let's say. Theoretically, you've got these traction zones at the top and the bottom of the circuit that could theoretically suit Ferrari or Aston Martin, but equally there are some sort of faster corners that Mercedes could do quite well in, and none of these teams are slouches. They'll all be going in to try and make the most of it. Whoever's going to be, let's say, Red Bull's kind of main challenger does remain to be seen. But it should be, as I say, another circuit that suits Red Bull. So the question is then, can Sergio Perez get off this bad spell of form and start challenging Verstappen again? And I think everyone will be hoping that he does and make something of this title battle, because otherwise it's going to be a little bit flat. But we'll see.
Yeah, the absolute minimum for Checo is to come home second. Given the dominance of that Red Bull car, he is a very good Grand Prix driver. He's been around a long time now, and anything that's not second, unless there's a technical problem, that is a really big issue for that team. I think they've got the driver in their number 2 driver, and I would say Red Bull clearly 1 and 2. He might make radio calls saying, hey, we can still fight for, our side of the garage can fight for a championship win, as he did in Azerbaijan, but it's a clearly 1-2 team, and he just needs to be coming home second every time. That's an absolute minimum. I'm glad you mentioned Ferrari though, JBL. Can you talk a little bit, Jake, about that change of philosophy of Ferrari, particularly visually, the bits we can see that isn't the floor, and the change of side pod design, and yet Spain, I mean, it was just a stinker last time out. Specifically on Ferrari, what are your thoughts for this weekend?
It was a very kind of interesting design, because it wasn't, let's say, as forecast as it was for Mercedes. We were expecting it for a long time. Then Ferrari turns up with their own sort of, I guess, edition of the sort of ramped side pods, throwing out the bathtub with the baby almost, with that design, tortured metaphor aside. But it wasn't particularly forecast. I think they ran back to back in Barcelona. It felt very apparent that they were sort of quite happy with the direction overall. It was just such a poor weekend, so we don't really know how it has genuinely affected the Ferrari, how much performance it brings. With Mercedes, it's kind of been very, very clear from the outset, and now for them, the deal is they just need to sort of tweak it and tune it and work it out. Ferrari needs to do the same, but mainly to kind of tap into the vein of form rather than just try and perfect things. Canada should be a little bit better for it, I think. The team has had moments this season where it's looked really, really strong, and Baku was one of them, and then it's kind of been back down to earth with a bump. So I think everybody's hoping to kind of see just a better run of form from them, because we need them in this fight for sure.
Well, there will be some smiles plenty of smiles at Maranello this week after winning the centenary running of Le Mans, the first time that Ferrari have returned as a manufacturer in the top flight of Le Mans, and they go and win it at their first try. Now, of course, last week we saw a sudden balance of performance rules change, with Toyota getting a ton more weight and cars like the Peugeot having no impact on that. What are your thoughts on, and this might be way off the mark, but does Ferrari's success at Le Mans almost heap even more pressure on their Formula One program? Hey, first time back at Le Mans as in 50 years in the top flight, and they go and win the thing. Why can't Ferrari's F1 team go and do something similar? Maybe I'm being a little bit unfair. What do you think, John?
I don't think it's increased pressure on the team. The pressure on the Ferrari Formula One team is always immense, and it's a different category, isn't it? It's Formula One. It's the peak single-seater motor racing category in the world. So if you win there, you've got to be the best of absolutely everything. And I think sports cars, in some ways it may even release a little bit of pressure, because there has been some success in sports cars now. It's won the biggest sports car race there is. The Ferrari brand will be quite buoyed by it. But I think what's perhaps more interesting is this kind of debate about the influence of BOP on motor racing categories, because I think BOP played a critical part in that weekend. It was a close fight between Toyota and Ferrari after the changes pre-weekend. Did it make the difference or not? We'll never know. But they used BOP there. Formula One's always been about this meritocracy, which fine means we go through boring seasons and means that the Red Bull advantage now is just as big as it was at the start of the season. But I think that meritocracy makes Formula One a bit pure, and helps when those teams do catch up, and when someone finally beats Red Bull again. I think there'll be a bigger celebration of how real that is, rather than it just being because Red Bull got some ballast or others were allowed to turn their engines up a bit more.
And let's talk a little bit about Aston Martin, John. What are your contacts there, your sources, talking about the possible upgrade package this weekend in Canada? We saw Fernando Alonso finishing outside the top four. That was a rarity in 2023 in Spain. Was that a one-off? Do Aston need to up their game on the upgrade package to make sure they remain best of the rest?
Yeah, I spoke to Mike Crack on the Sunday in Spain, and I said Fernando's putting pressure on the team to bring upgrades as quick as they can. He said there's something coming for Canada. Wouldn't say what it was, said it would be a step, so we'll have to wait and see. But I suspect they need to bring more performance kind of for low drag configurations. Their car's been very good in high downforce, very good on braking, very good traction, but has lacked that straight line speed edge. So I wonder if it's something moving in that direction just to boost that straight line speed. I mean, the track should be better. And I think Spain was primarily about qualifying. Fernando made that mistake in Q1. Floor was damaged, started down the grid. And the way Formula One is at the moment, sure, the top team has disappeared, but behind it, it's so close. And you qualify out of position, it's very, very hard to come through.
Let's talk long-term tech. JBL, the president of the FIA, Mohammed Ben Sulayem, talking about the 2026 rules. As our technical editor, you keep a keen eye on these things. And he told Autosport he believes there's a need for a lighter car. I think, well, if we're making our wishes, can we have a smaller car as well? But let's start with lighter. And what are your thoughts on what he said about 2026 and how the rules package is coming together long-term?
Well, the thing is that the cars have just swelled in weight, and I think this season was the first time in a very, very long time where there was actually a weight reduction. It was only by a couple of kilograms, but it was a result of just all of these safety matters and things like that. A lot of thunder going on outside.
I was going to say, I've just mentioned what the boss of the FIA wants, and all of a sudden all hell breaks loose in the weather. Like, what's going on here? So yeah, we do need to slim down the cars a little bit. Is that achievable? Are we far enough away from 2026 to get these all manufacturers all aligned?
I think so. Certainly, yeah, it is long overdue, and let's say 20, years ago, the cars were about 600 kilograms, sort of give or take. They were much smaller. They were about a meter shorter as well. They didn't have all of the safety devices that we now have. So that's something to sort of take into account. That's part of the reason why the cars are so big now, partly as well due to kind of powertrain packaging and things like that. A lot of it aerodynamics related. Everyone's kind of realised that having a longer car is more beneficial from that regard. So if you can kind of mandate a size and then just a weight limit, and not sort of be too lenient with it, because you had a lot of teams at the start of 2022 going, look, we're a little bit heavy, can we just kind of raise the weight limit a little bit? And the FIA kind of acquiesced to that a little bit too much. To be kind of stringent with it and work out what your formula is going to be, then that's a step in the right direction. And I think it's something we need because the cars are so huge. The racing does suffer a little bit from it. So yeah, 2026, hopefully we'll get something to that effect.
Sounds like your roof is about to cave in, so we'll wrap up the video pretty quickly. John, final question to you. You're about to jump on a plane and head out to Montreal. What can we expect this weekend? Who do you think this track favours the most?
Well, Red Bull, because it's a Formula 1 track in 2023, so there's that one. I think behind it, it should be pretty close. We know the Ferrari's quick in qualifying. It's made some gains, but I think it's the consistency in races is still a major problem. It was exposed in Spain, and it'll probably be exposed again in Canada, because it can be quite a tricky track in terms of looking after the tyres, the traction zones, heavy braking. So they'll be there. I think the Mercedes should be up there, probably not on the pace of the Red Bull, but I think may suspect Aston to be completely back in the picture again. I think Fernando will be kicking himself over what happened in Q1, losing that opportunity. If Aston can bring an upgrade that increases the efficiency, makes that car quicker in a straight line, I think Fernando will be back up there. So I'd put him on being the first non-Red Bull on the podium.
We are looking forward to this weekend, and of course we've got a lot to cover for you online right now at autosport.com. All the latest news online every day. If you're anything like me, I end up going to the website several times a day and hitting refresh and seeing what's changed, but there we go. You can also pick up the magazine every Thursday as well and check out our great Le Mans coverage and some gorgeous pictures. I've seen the team putting that together already today. It is looking fabulous. That'll be out, or maybe dropping through your letterbox on Thursday if you are already a subscriber. Thank you for supporting the work that we do. What do you think about Canada this weekend? We'd love to hear from you in the comments below. Apart from, obviously, the Red Bulls, who are you predicting to have a good weekend? Can Mercedes keep the form going? Will Alonso and Aston Martin get back on the podium this weekend? We'd love to hear from you. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.